Yo, what's going on everybody? Swagkage here, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about the Shadow Possession Jutsu, also known as the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu, Kagemane no Jutsu in the original Japanese text, and the Art of Me and My Shadow according to the Viz translation of the manga. Now, while Shikamaru is 100% responsible for this technique's notoriety and popularity, it isn't a signature jutsu that belongs to him and only him. The Shadow Possession Jutsu, along with all of its variants, belongs to the Nara clan, obviously the family that Shikamaru hails from. The clan initially created it for the purpose of assisting its hunters in the capture of deer, but over time began to realize that it had pretty solid battlefield applications as well. I guess they decided that it was such a good jutsu, in fact, that nobody else should be able to learn how it works. As it is a Hiden technique, no one outside of the Nara clan has shown the ability to use it, and I'd venture to guess that that's not going to change anytime soon due to the nature of jutsu like this. Most clans keep the mechanics of their Hiden techniques to themselves, and are very careful about which members of their family they pass that knowledge on to. Shadow Possession is a great example of why that is the case. It's a very powerful jutsu, at least when being used by somebody who has a knack for strategy and tactics. Its fundamentals involve manipulating a shadow conjured by the jutsu caster for a variety of different purposes, primarily to temporarily control the user's enemy or enemies. By manually bending and shaping their conjured shadow, the user can force it to make contact with and thereafter merge with the naturally formed shadow of the target they have in mind. Once this is done, they can exercise the control I mentioned earlier, at least when using modern iterations of the jutsu. The Shadow Paralysis Jutsu, or the Shadow Bind technique as it's known in the original Japanese text, was only capable of freezing targets in place upon contact with the user's shadow. Shadow Possession Jutsu, on the other hand, allows its user complete control over the movements of the person captured in their shadow, though the method of exercising this control is a bit unorthodox, as it requires its user to carry out any actions that they want their target to mimic themselves. In other words, this jutsu forces the person or people being affected by it to mirror the movements of the user, and while that might not sound like a very useful ability to have, believe me, when used by somebody creative enough, it can be a pretty devastating jutsu. Shikamaru, being the genius he is, has shown off countless clever uses for the jutsu, though it's a bit difficult to fully appreciate his skill and creativity with Shadow Possession without taking into account the jutsu's limitations first. Now, before I proceed to explain the technique's weaknesses, I will go ahead and open up by saying that it does have many traits that are inherently beneficial and advantageous, the most notable of which is the fact that it is a yin-release jutsu, meaning that it has no elemental strengths or weaknesses. Additionally, since this technique involves manipulating shadows as opposed to something physical like fire, water, lightning, earth, etc., it's nigh impossible to overpower it with sheer force. A person can't simply blast the shadow away with a fire jutsu per se. It is possible to break free of the jutsu's control, as shown when Metal Lee did this by presumably opening up at least 3 of the gates, as his skin had clearly turned red when he escaped from Shikadai's Shadow Possession, but this is likely a one-time instance, as nothing like this has ever happened before. Now, those advantages are nothing to scoff at, but this jutsu does carry a whole lot of pretty restrictive disadvantages as well. While the shadow can be cast across any surface, including water, as seen when Naruto was captured by this jutsu at the Waterfall of Truth, this is only true when it is moving across a surface where a shadow could be feasibly cast. Typically, the strength of the light source in an area, along with the amount of light present in that area, are what determines the potential size and strength of the shadow created by this jutsu, but it's a bit difficult to explain just exactly how lighting affects this jutsu's usability. Now, regardless of how bright the area the technique is being used in is, this jutsu will always have a static and pretty strict range. This range presumably increases proportionately to the amount of and brightness of light present in the area. It is generally never really all that long. That said, there are a few ways to bypass this range limit, at least temporarily, and I will list a few examples of those now. The first is to merge the shadow being controlled with environmental shadows, which seemingly gives the conjured shadow a new base to start from. This was clearly shown when Shikamaru used the shadow cast by his airborne kunai, along with the shadows created in the underground tunnel he ran his shadow through in order to capture Tamari in his battle with her in the Chunin exams. Another way to temporarily increase the shadow's range is to create a bright flash of light, such as that provided by a flash grenade, as seen in Shikamaru's battle with Taiyuya. Another unorthodox method of increasing the technique's range is to attach the shadow to the shadow of another person and allow that person to move within close range of the jutsu user's desired target. See, once the shadow merges with the shadow of another person, until the jutsu is dispelled, the range limit effectively disappears peers. No matter how far away they move, they will not be able to shake the jutsu's effects, meaning that if a person wanted to capture a consenting ally with the jutsu, but not actually use it to bind or control them, that person can move around freely until they came within range of the jutsu user's actual desired target, at which point the jutsu caster could then merge their shadow with the shadow of the aforementioned target, though of course this requires a lot of pre-planning and an ally to be present nearby. If you want to see exactly what I'm talking about, check out chapter 523, it's in volume 55. This happens exactly as I described it in the battle against the reanimated 7 ninja swordsmen, so hopefully you'll be able to get a better idea of it from the actual manga. Oh yeah, also it's possible to infuse weapons with the traits of the Shadow Possession Jutsu, meaning that theoretically it's possible to give this jutsu infinite range. Shikamaru doesn't do this often though, so I'd imagine there's a reason for that. Whatever it is, it's gotta be a pretty big deal. Anyway, aside from the range limit, there's also a pretty strict time limit on this jutsu as well. Shikamaru has made it very evident many times that he can't hold this jutsu for very long, and heck, Hidan even pointed out that it seems to eat away at his chakra pretty rapidly. As the chakra of the jutsu user is depleted, as I'm sure you can guess for yourself, the potential range and strength of the jutsu is decreased as well, so it's an ability that cannot be used in rapid succession. Thankfully, there are some lethal applications of the technique found in its derivatives that sort of bypass the need to use it for very long periods of time, like the Shadow Strangle Jutsu, which involves creating a hand from the conjured shadow that travels up the body of its target and chokes them to death. That says it all, I doubt I need to explain anymore. And the Shadow Stitching Jutsu, or the Kage Nui no Jutsu, which pierces the target with materialized shadows and can also serve to capture them the same way the Shadow Possession Jutsu does as well. There are quite a few more ways to apply this jutsu, but I'm pretty sure that does it for its fundamentals, so I think this is where I'm going to end the video off. No need to worry, I'm going to talk a whole lot more about how cool Shadow Possession is when I do a breakdown of Shikamaru's abilities and his moveset sometime in the future, but for now, I think you're just going to have to make do with this. So as always, if you have any ideas for a future video topic you want me to cover, leave it in the comments below. But above all else, thank you guys for watching the video all the way to the end, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. Till my next video, I'll talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.